pretty busy guy. I mean, you record. How many bands do you think you've recorded in your time at the Glow? If you had to guess.
Wow. It's well over 1,000, but I couldn't be more specific than that.
Right. Wow.
January is 17 years of the Glow.
17 years.
Yeah.
Wow. Congratulations.
So, thanks. Yeah.
That's so much time.
It seems ridiculous to even say it out loud. It doesn't seem real, but so yeah, it's a lot of recording, and then I mean, if you count like mixing and mastering and all that, yeah, it's a big number. I have no idea. I've only recently started taking stock of like what releases I'm working on and like keeping track, you know? So.
Yeah. I mean, 17 years, you're eventually gonna lose track, I would think, unless you're very
a lot of it's
Excel
gone.
driven.
Yeah.
You know?
I'm trying now. I'm trying really hard to just
That's awesome, man. I'm excited to get into it, but I do want to talk about In Rainbows.
Okay.
My favorite album. I'm so happy you picked it. No prompt. I didn't steer you towards this. It is probably my favorite album of all time, but you said off the air that when you first heard it as a Radiohead fan currently when it came out, you were heavily disappointed.
I didn't like it at all, and I even remember getting on like some sort of like record review forum or something, and like making all these terrible puns about how it was like a letdown, like just like really bad. I don't know why I hated it so much. I really, I can't get back into that headspace. I think I can say that like they're my favorite like mainstream contemporary rock band. Most of that has to do with the recording, I think, which is something I realized way too late in my career. Like I went to music school and like really thought, oh, it's music. But I realized later on that I'm more about sound. Like I care more about that.
Clarity, sound.
Sometimes lack of clarity.
True.
Mystery.
Yeah. So what about this album was striking to you sonically?
Well, I think it's the best sounding Radiohead record by far. So that's the thing. Yeah, I initially hated it, came around to it in a major way. It's probably my second favorite at this point.
Oh, but okay. What's number one?
Hail to the Thief.
Whoa.
Which is nobody's number one. I know.
I'm always curious when somebody says that.
That Hail one, I think it was kind of a product of its time. So like thematically, it was very important. I think just the age I was at, I love those songs. I love how it sounds, so that one's still, that's like that's their White Album.
Right.
To me.
Yeah.
So
I think so too.
And the White Album is my favorite Beatles record. So
there you go.
That's my favorite. This one's number two. Again, sounds far better than any of their records. And I kind of use it as a reference point in a lot of things. And it, researching how this record was recorded has kind of shaped my approach to recording in a major way. So
wow. Is there a specific song that like struck you first? I mean, saying it was a letdown at first is huge. So something must have brought you around to it. Was it a track? Or?
Yeah. What was it that did it? Honestly, I mean, it's probably Jigsaw.
Yeah.
Jigsaw, like, once I realized how brilliant that song was, it made the whole record brilliant to me. Again, I have I can't excuse my, I have no idea why I was so unhappy with it.
That is very interesting.
It was weird. I tend to have strong initial reactions to things, and then I can come around later. And my wife always gets on to me about that type of reaction, especially to art or music, you know, because there are things that I hated, first time, and then repeated listens get me there.
Did you feel that way about Kid A? Because that I feel like is the classic I hate this Radiohead album, but now I like it.
Yeah, no, that one I liked immediately. within seconds of hearing that for the first time.
Whoa,
you know,
that's
I
interesting.
was in college. I used to go to my friend Jordan's house. You know, back in the day when people had time to like sit there, and I mean, we'd get real stoned and sit on his couch and listen to records. You know, like, and the first time I heard that one, I was in that headspace and just floored. I didn't say anything. I didn't move. I didn't do anything for like the entire side, and then we had to flip it over, and it kept being amazing. Interestingly, if we're ranking Radiohead records,
I'm all about it.
Amnesiac speaks to me more than Kid A. Also,
Whoa.
So yeah,
you're filled with Radiohead hot takes.
It's yeah.
I love it.
I think I have hot takes on everything, but
that's awesome. I have the Kid Amnesia record that just came out last year. And, I listened to Amnesiac for the first time in a while the other day, and I mean, I don't know. I feel like to me it certainly is the B-sides to Kid A.
Right.
I don't feel that same draw to that as I do with Kid A. Like, to me, it's not even close. But I do think it has some of their best songs. Like Knives Out is amazing.
Knives Out's amazing.
I love Pull/Polk or whatever, that Revolving Doors, whatever that one's called.
That one's transcendental.
Yeah. I just think there's a few like solid, straight up
Which
misses.
one is Pyramid Song on?
Pyramid Song's on there, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I love that shit. It's
a good one.
Love it, yeah. So...
Yeah, there's some good ones, but, you know, to me, Kid A doesn't miss. Like, there's no misses.
No, and I agree with that completely. Yeah, it's... again, I think, you know, we attach certain qualities to records, you know, obviously based on, like, that point in our life where we heard it or the surroundings.
Absolutely.
Or the, you know, whatever. Yeah, but I'm not trying to be contrarian or anything like that. I just really, you know, Amnesiac and Hail to the Thief. I think we're just instrumental in how the sounds that I try to make in a studio, and more so than the counterparts. So that's where that comes from, I believe, coupled with just, you know, whatever was going on in my life. Yeah,
that's crazy. Yeah, I don't think I've met anybody that would say Hail to the Thief and Amnesiac are like top two for them. But I mean, that's cool. Like, there's no reason why it can't be.
Yeah.
And we can keep talking about Radiohead for hours and hours, but for the sake of the listeners, let's bring this around to, you know, your studio, your work. And we can certainly circle back to Radiohead if we're feeling like it. But for those who don't know, Jesse Mangum here on That Note. Thank you for joining me. I'm excited to get you in here. Owner, operator of the Glow recording studio here in Athens. I learned recently that you built it with your own hands.
I did.
Over the course of 4 years.
Yep.
Right?
It was me and my dad. My dad would come up I'm from Jacksonville. My family's still in Jacksonville, Florida. He would come up and, you know, we'd kind of knock out whatever we could in like a weekend. And then he would leave, you know, for maybe a month, and I would just keep going. I had never built anything before that. So that's part of the reason it took so long, is I was kind of like learning how to do things, and then like, you know, destroying materials by fucking up. And so that, coupled with I was just a barista, you know, I had a good 20-hour a week barista income, and so that didn't allow for like major work to be done, you know. It was just like as I could do it, you know.
Yeah, I've watched in the, what was it, Athens Rising documentary, that you said you would buy like $5 or $20 worth of like 2x4s and then install them, and then like wait another week and then do the same thing.
It was that a lot, because, you know, without going too far into like how to build a studio, but like for soundproofing, you need lots and lots of mass to stop sounds from going out. What that usually means in a studio is you're going to build a room within a room.
Okay.
In the case of the Glow, it's a room within a room within a room. So, so effectively, I built 3 full-size studios, but there's only one. You know, you only see
one is
the shell inside. Yeah. So that is also why it took a long time and used a lot of materials. And the thing about only buying 3 or 4 2x4s each time is like you can only make like one small segment, and so then you need to, the next time you add to that, you have to have another 2x4. So you're actually doubling the material, having, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like way more than if you had just bought it all at once. But I mean,
Right.
that was just not in the cards for me. So,
Interesting. And yet you still made it happen.
I did. It was rough, man.
Yeah.
It was
4
not,
years is a long
It was not
time.
fun. Like 4 years of like drywall.
Right. Did at any point where you think like, this is insane? Like, I mean, 4 years is a long time to second guess yourself and things like that. Were you always like eye on the prize?
Oh, I mean, at every point I thought it was insane. It's not, construction is not my thing. I wanted to record. But I did have this kind of like, just super motivation to push through it, especially when, you get like halfway through and you're like, well, I have to finish it now,
Right.
So, I built the control room first, which I actually recorded. This is how desperate I was to like stop doing drywall mud and like record like smallish control room. It's like 12 by 14 feet. So I would record bands in there. I didn't have like a big console. I would just have like my computer and my interface. I would be in the corner. Drummer would be 6 feet away from me, the guitar amps, just so I could do it. I was just so desperate to do it. Those are not my best recordings, and I don't know if they're out there or not.
I'm sure you were losing your mind a little bit with making the studio that you're like, you probably forget why you're doing it, so you have to record again.
I mean, I can't lie. I was super depressed most of the time building the studio because it was just so slow going, and like I didn't take out any loans. I didn't have any credit. I didn't, so it was like very much just, this is what I'm doing. I have to keep going.
Wow.
And it got there eventually. Yeah. It was like I think I started in 2008, and by 2012, everything was like kind of as it is now.
Wow.
So, yeah.
What were some of the, like, maybe some of the obstacles that came up that the average person might not really think about when it comes to making a recording studio?
Like building a studio?
Yeah. Like some complicated things you had to figure out.
Yeah, I mean, this is going to be kind of niche, but it's important. Knowing the difference between soundproofing and sound treating is significant, because people will talk about sound treatment but say soundproofing. Soundproofing is only, like I said, adding as much mass and density as you can to stop these large, especially like bass waves are really long, 20, 30, 40 feet long.
Whoa.
Yeah. So the only thing that will kind of keep that from getting out and keep low frequencies from getting back in the studio is just, multiple walls, heavy as possible, So that's what actually stops it. You could layer any room with, that like egg carton looking foam. Even if it was 6 feet thick, it wouldn't actually do anything because it's not massive. It's not dense enough. It'll control the reflections.
You need density.
Yeah.
To get rid of bass.
Lots of, tons and tons and tons,
Wow.
I've never even tried to calculate what the studio weighs, but like those walls are insane because it's, a frame, 2 layers of drywall glued together, which kind of like exponentially increases the density. Then, insulation, a foot of airspace, same thing again.
Whoa.
And then one more time, and so luckily it works, the only thing that gets in or out of the studio at this point is like sub bass, like really low sub bass. Otherwise it's pretty good, it's airtight, like there's an airlock door. So, it worked out, but just so much extra effort.
The
other thing to look out for, again, super niche, but like kind of physical transference of sound, like if you have anything that's touching, say, the next room, so like the control room, for example, is completely separated. The only thing it's actually touching is some really dense foam. and then like boards are on top of that. But so it's never actually touching. If you were just to take like a board and just hammer it in, touching both walls, like the noise would be exponentially greater through just transferring through the framework of the walls.
Whoa.
So that was difficult to like figure out. Like, okay, I need connections. I need to be able to get from this room to this room. I need a door here. How do I make a door that's not actually touching
both rooms?
Right. And it's complicated. Yeah.
Yeah, I can't even
it's crazy.
imagine.
So that was like one of the most challenging things. And again, I did this all from like a book. I got like 2 books on building home studios and just studied and studied and studied, and then tried and failed and tried again. And, so ultimately, again, it worked out, but not without a lot of failure.
Right.
Yeah,
you got to try it, and you're going to mess up in anything. You're not going to do it right the first time.
Yeah,
you got to figure out
or
the ways
third.
to do it wrong. Yeah, or the third, or the 17th.
Yeah.
But I heard that you apparently built it to almost the exact specifications of like the Motown studio, the classic Motown studio.
Right.
That was accidental.
That was totally an accident. I was using, dating back to like the 20s, there's kind of a list of like room ratios. So like, this dimension, that dimension.
Right.
That are acoustically related in such a way as to provide what at least these dudes in the 20s determined to be like the best acoustical properties. So once I knew the space of the shell, like it's a big steel building, just like a garage building in my backyard is basically the shell of the studio. That was there. Nothing inside it was there. But once I knew that and could plan, like, okay, I'm going to get the biggest room I can get within that shell that is exactly this ratio of dimensions.
Yeah.
Sorry guys, this is so nerdy.
Dude, this is going to be one for the nerds, this episode,
Yeah.
I'm all about it.
It's a nerdy thing. It's a nerdy industry, if we're being honest. But
yeah, that's what you don't realize. Like, all of your favorite musicians are probably total nerds.
Super nerds.
That's just how it is,
Yeah. Sorry to spill the beans. But,
yeah.
But so yeah, I was using that. I found one that was like the closest to the dimensions that I had, factoring, and also that, again, it's going to be a room within a room within a room. So like my space kept getting smaller and smaller. So like my internal shell had to be that shape.
Mm-hmm.
And then like the ones outside, it was less relevant, but the internal dimensions had to be that. And then I was, just constantly researching, like especially older studios, Motown, Stax, Abbey Road, all that stuff, and found like the dimensions of the original Motown studio. And I mean, I don't remember exactly, but it's a matter of inches, like a few inches off.
Right.
And which is crazy because my studio is not huge, but it's, if it was good enough for them, that kind of like made me feel better about like, well, this is adequate because it was good enough for some of my favorite recordings to be made. So
exactly.
But totally an accident. I'm pretty sure they were not thinking about the ratios or anything, so they kind of stumbled upon like ideal.
Mm-hmm. Do you feel like that's the ideal setting as well?
Then
like amount of dimensions?
I would love for my place to be a lot bigger, but the same type of ratio. I compromise. It's a list. It's like this one's best. This one's here.
Yeah.
The golden ratio is in there. So the same thing that's like really good for visual art is also, and acoustics.
Interesting.
It's weird.
The golden ratio applies to it like how? Like where you mic something or?
No, like the dimensions of the room.
Okay.
I don't offhand remember the golden ratio, but I remember learning about it in like art class or
right.
And whatever it is dimensionally to a portrait or a whatever, that same thing tends to work out acoustically. So that's like number 3 or 4 on this list of like the 20 best things.
Gotcha.
So I just found the one that was closest to what I had and built to that. And then same with the control room. I found one that was closest to what I could fit
Gotcha.
with the remaining space. And it does work out. It measures, so the calculations that you do before you even start building, it kind of tells you like, oh, you will have kind of an excess of 40 hertz or something like that. So I knew exactly what my problem spots would be long before I built it. And then eventually when it was done, I tested and it was dead on. It's the same thing,
Crazy.
Yeah. It's pretty cool. It's pretty spooky that it worked out, but
yeah, the spirit was in there.
Yeah.
Other than dimensions and sound treatment, do you feel like there's a third, fourth, or maybe even fifth option of or characteristic that really makes a studio special?
I think vibe.
Yeah.
Vibe. And I was going heavy on the vibe, and I think most people that have been there would agree that it has a vibe. I was going for that because at the time I didn't have a lot in the way of gear or microphones or instruments or anything, so I had to make it like feel like a good place to make music. And I had never at that point been to another studio. So I knew what they looked like, and I didn't.
When you were making your studio, you had never been to another studio?
Well, I can't say never. Growing up, my dad and a business partner had a recording studio when I was very, very young. I think they closed maybe when I was 9 or something. I was up there a lot, but I was just using
But you weren't just like going into studios all the time?
No, like since then I hadn't been in one. I think the first one I went in was actually like 2 or 3 years ago. I finally went to Chase Park.
Whoa, that's
just to check
wild.
out, because David had just gotten his Neve console, and I just wanted to go see that and stuff. So yeah, it's largely been outsider art for me. I mean, I'm self-taught.
That's sick.
And mostly books, which again I think is important. Perhaps things would be different if I had YouTube back then. I'm old, y'all. But
the books are still great.
I kind of like the book thing because it's your interpretation of what you're reading, and I think you get a better fundamental understanding of, say, how like compression works when it's presented that way, rather than like I feel like the YouTube way, which has its merits. There's a lot to be learned, and again, I wish I would have had that platform, but I didn't. But the thing about that, it seems it's like presented as like this is the compressor I use, and these are the settings that I use, and I don't think anyone's walking away understanding why they chose that compressor. Typically, from what I see, it's because the other YouTuber also chose that compressor and those settings. And so like there's a lot of misinformation, and there's a lack of information in terms of like understanding those concepts. I've been wrestling with the concept of compression for over 20 years. I get it, but I still struggle with how to use it in every different instance. Like it's like, get the concept, it doesn't always do what you think it's going to do. So like the notion of kind of having presets and whatnot, to me, don't get you very far, actually.
That's kind of comforting for me to hear, to know that somebody who's been doing this for 20 years still doesn't feel like they necessarily have a total understanding of something like compression.
Yeah.
It's
I get it. I could communicate it. I could teach it.
But it's just nice to know it's not a science where you plug it in, you get this every time. It's like
it's a moving target. All audio is.
Moving
and so
target.
I think that's another thing that I see happening a lot is people will like see these YouTube videos and they'll be like, okay, well, this is the vocal chain that they use.
Right.
And they will copy that verbatim. And there's so many problems with that because no two voices are alike at all. They're, not even close. And so they'll use the same mic, and it's okay if you only have that one mic, that's cool. But I try out 3, 4, 5 different mics on each vocalist because everybody's got a different, certain frequencies are harsh, others, some people have deeper voices. It's totally different. And it's the same with plugins. If you just have like a preset EQ and a preset compression and then preset de-essing is another problem I see. People just kind of have it set to one thing, and you know, 20 decibels of de-essing on one person might make it sound good, but on another person they suddenly have a very, very like hard lisp because of what you did, because you didn't adjust it, you know. So I see that kind of thing happening a lot, where it's there's just not a one size, one tool, you know.
And it's like, of course, you know, but for whatever reason, to me, and I'm sure to other people, at first it seems like, you know, the Logic compressor, I know, especially they give you presets. They're male Vox. And you're like, okay, well, I guess this is what it's like for every man.
Yeah,
you know?
Every man in the world has the same exact shape of voice. No, it's a good way to learn the effects of what it's doing, but I still think it's better to know why it's doing what it's doing, and then you can, you know, I don't use presets at all in any circumstance. I build it up based on what I'm hearing. But, you know, there's many different paths to get. There's no end. That's the other thing. I was going to say to get to the end or whatever, but there's no end. Like, what's cool about this job in particular is that every single session, learned something new. 20 years in, still like, tiniest little thing, it doesn't matter. I'm like, oh, this, you know, like, why didn't I understand that? You know, just like you can be presented, you can read a book and then read a book 10 years later. I mean, fiction even. And, you know, have a totally different interpretation of what you just read, you know. So it's the same, you can use the same tools, the same mics, and eventually you just figure stuff out.
Yeah. I mean, how many times do you make a recording, take a lunch break, come back to it, and it sounds different?
Same thing.
So it's like within 30 minutes, your ears are hearing something different.
Totally different. That's an important thing too. Is watch your hearing, y'all. Like it, very, very important to like take care of your ears if you want to be in this industry in any capacity.
Over the last couple months, I started wearing earplugs to concerts.
Good.
And it's game changing.
Yeah.
I got the clear ones that still allow sound in. It's not like the foam ones.
Yeah.
Because I never really liked...
the foam takes the fun out of it.
Totally.
And
you look stupid. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
The other ones like look... You don't see them, first of all, really. And it truly does just make all the harsh noise of like a live show go away. And you can just enjoy the clarity.
Yeah. It's... No, I think that's really crucial. If you're mixing, if you're doing long hours, I mean, you know, I do it 10, 12 hours a day. So my volume personally is very, very low all day. I'll bump it up to check something, you know, if it's music that's going to be played loud, I'll see how it sounds loud for a few seconds, but that's it. And once you get used to that, you also you hear it better, for lack of a better.
Yeah. Because I've always heard that when people are mixing or just listening back to a track that they're working on currently, that listening to it at a low to medium volume is the way to do it. But it's so tempting for me to just want to crank it.
Oh yeah, but everything sounds better loud.
That's,
you know.
Yeah, exactly.
But unfortunately, you know, our ears see that as a threat and start to take action, and so suddenly our ears are dulling the high frequencies and like dulling the upper mids around 3K, which is where like, this is cool. So like that's where human speech is centered, like intelligibility is right around 3K. They think that's probably because that's also where like a baby's cry exists primarily, and so we evolved to like be most sensitive to that. So that's why that also hurts the most. If you like boost 3 or 4K on anything too much, it hurts because we already have accentuated reception of that, you know.
To hear a baby's cry.
To hear human speech, you know, it came about once like speech came in to, you know, even early telephones and stuff, they basically had a very, you know, the telephone effect
the EQ.
it comes from the fact that like that narrow bit between 2K and 4K is all you really need to
hear everything you
to
need to hear.
hear speech.
Right.
And that was much easier to push across not power lines, telephone lines, than a broad spectrum,
Whoa.
So that's why it's like that, and obviously we don't have that limitation anymore, but
That's so interesting.
yeah.
Everything's on purpose.
Yeah. And it's all, it's also, I mean, yeah, I forget which book I was reading about it. Lots of books, like I said.
I was going to say, do you have any books for the beginner producers out there who want to, gain some knowledge?
You know what? If I were teaching a class, which I hope to do at some point in my career, my textbook, if I had to choose now, is actually this book called, it's one of those Dummies series books. It's called Home Recording for Musicians for Dummies. And I have hundreds of books on the subject, and that one is the most concise, the most informative. Like, it's actually not dumbed down at all. It just like they nailed how to communicate these ideas. So if you're confused about what's happening with attack and release times on compressors or ratios or thresholds or anything like that, that book is the most like planing, like, here's what's happening, here's diagrams, and like it does it better than any other book that I have. And
wow.
So if you can get past the fact that you're buying like a dummy book, that book is great.
For whatever reason, those got a bad rap. I don't know why.
It's
just such a smart idea. Just get experts from every field.
They're just telling you
right.
very plainly how to, I don't think I've read too many others in other categories because, this is kind of all I think about.
Right.
But that book just does it, So I would get that one. If you're into mixing, there's this book called The Art of Mixing by David Gibson that is kind of a visual approach to, there's like floating orbs representing certain sounds in space.
Oh yeah, I've seen
you've seen the picture. Yeah,
picture.
There's also a really entertaining, very long video that the writer did of basically the whole contents of the book, and it's super corny, but
yeah, I think I watched some of it one day, and I was like, "What? This is so
full
like
mullet,
late '90s, early 2000s kind of."
Yeah, it was
maybe even earlier.
It was earlier, I think.
Wow.
To me, it seems like early 90s because he says some like questionable stuff like, to excite the rap listener, boost, 40 hertz
no
or,
way.
like just, which that's another interesting thing about like kind of the biological reason that certain sounds affect us that way is the reason we are, okay, say you're like in the club, you're in a club and it's whether it's like EDM or hip hop or just something that has really huge low end and really crisp high end, the reason we kind of react to that in kind of it makes us feel weird. It's a good weird, but that's because back in the day when you were having to like run away from like a predator, something that was very close to you would have more low frequencies and more high frequencies. That indicates that it's getting closer to you. So that like smiley curve that we all, do where you boost the lows and highs, it's the same thing. It's like tricking our brain in a way into thinking it's still, just leftover part of our brain that's not really useful anymore. But like, it's what makes, drum and bass music or whatever sound so like menacing. Is that shit's really close to you. It's a threat, just because it has more of that. If you want to make something sound far away in mixing, you kind of do the inverse. You have like some mid-range, but you don't have any lows, you don't have any highs. It's not a threat anymore because it's further away from you.
Whoa.
So like you can use EQ to push things back just like you can use reverb or whatever. But like our brain's going to interpret it the same way. That thing's further away.
Dang.
So yeah, again, there's some crazy book, and I will never remember the title of it, but it's kind of like about human hearing, and kind of explains that whole theory better than I'm doing right now. But
I mean, no, that makes sense to me. It's so interesting to think about the psychology of mixing, or like
It may be called the
using
psychology of music. I think.
There you go. That would be a great title.
Yeah.
Or just, the idea of using psychology and psychological concepts within whatever field you're doing, whether that's filmmaking, whether that's, mixing, mastering, just producing music in general. It's interesting to think that you can, in a way, like hack the brain if you know what you're doing.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think we get there, we stumble upon it,
Right.
and we don't know that that's what's going on,
And then you just kind of realize later why it's like that.
Yeah. Because I think that's where, as like a teenager, when I heard drum and bass or Portishead or, anything that had like this massive low end, I was more attracted to it, but I, couldn't possibly explain away what it was about it.
Right.
But it made me feel some type of way. And in hindsight, it was probably that, it's just like that low bass. It's more than just like, oh, that sounds cool. It's like, oh, this is a threat to my monkey brain,
Yeah. It just feels like larger than life.
Yeah. I feel it's big and close. And, so we're kind of, anybody that produces that kind of music, it's, whether intentionally or not, generally speaking, I don't think too many people like, dubstep producers are thinking about that. They're just like, I like this. This is
right.
What's, sounds good to me.
Exactly.
But it's cool. It's cool to, like I said, it kind of comes back to just like understanding compression, understanding EQ even, and like what the initial purpose of EQ was. You just see everything differently, and it makes everything easier, I think.
Yeah.
So,
do you have an ideal day in the studio? Like, let's say, the best possible studio day just went down.
Yeah.
How did it go down? Start to finish.
I've been having a lot of those recently.
Nice.
So, I won't name any names because I don't, it's various projects, I guess. But vaguely speaking, like what I've been doing lately is I'll go in the morning, and for like 2 to 4 hours, case depending, I'm working mostly on mastering, because that's kind of like, once COVID hit initially, everybody was back at home. Nobody was recording in studios, yada, yada, yada. So like, and they weren't recording in mine because I voluntarily just shut down because I didn't want to deal with that.
Right.
So that became like more of a focus for me. It's mastering something I had done my whole career, but like it was at that point got to be like 90% of what I was doing. And so that is still there. That's still happening because I did more and more of it. And so what's happening now is finally I'm getting to the point where I'm booked for recording all day, every day. So I have to do extra hours where I'm just doing that. I'm trying to find a balance. It's not happening for at least a couple months, and I guess it's good to know that, but it's kind of scary. I'm just like, I'm going to be working 12 hours a day for the, until next year.
Wow.
But, good thing, but, it's pretty exhausting. But to answer your question, sorry.
No, you're good.
That's still like, to me, that's still a great day. So like I'll go in and I'll do that for a couple hours. It's just me.
The mastering.
I'm in there. Yeah.
Start with mastering.
Yeah. Start with mastering. My ears are the freshest in the morning. So that's when I need to do that. I need to listen critically and think critically. And so that's the best time for me to get that done. I do as much as I can. And then every day I kind of have fixed blocks. So I do 2 4-hour blocks every day of tracking and mixing. So that's it. Yeah, I kind of do that for a couple hours. Again, that's just me. And then the band comes in. It's always at like 1 o'clock, 1 to 5, 7 to 11. That's like, have a little tiny bit in between where I see my family. That's about the only time I see my family most of the time, because they have opposite schedules.
Right.
So, but Yeah, I've just been doing that and sleeping, and that's pretty much my day. But it's excellent because I happen to be working with people that I really like on music that I really like, which is not always the case. Like not everything is going to be to your taste, and I will, if I think another engineer or producer or studio is better suited for somebody, I will tell them that.
Right. Well, it's better for everybody if you let them know, like, you don't have to say it, but if you don't like the music, it's going to be more beneficial for them to find someone who likes it, because they're going to actually have some passion when they're making it with you.
Hopefully. That's the thing is like, I don't even think it's like a matter of liking, because I can get anything. I can see where they're, in fact, I like being challenged to do that, but I'll know that, if somebody's just like, well, we happen to have this guy that is the best polka, like just hyper niche, like you should consider him.
Sounds.
But with that said, if you choose to work with me, I will do as much possible research on recording traditional polka, and I'm going to do my best. I can't not do my best. Doesn't mean that I am the best at that thing. So, it depends. But lately, everything has been super great, and
nice.
So it's a good feeling, because you're like truly a team. You're working towards the same goal, and loving, pretty much every minute of it.
Yeah,
it's not always fun, but
yeah, I'm sure it's obviously a lot of work and a lot of hours and being exhausted and hearing the same things over and over again. Just when I get in the studio and hear my own song for 2 hours, I'm already ready to take a break. And you're doing that.
Well, breaks are good. I do take a lot of breaks.
Yeah, that's
very short breaks, but it, like you were saying earlier, like your ears will reset. Even on a short break, you'll come back in and suddenly be able to, like, whatever is problematic in a mix, you can suddenly hear, oh, it's just this. Whereas if you kept going, like fatigue mentally, actual hearing fatigue, like all of that sets in, and you're like kind of wasting time. Yeah. And you'll never get there. And so breaks are good, even little baby breaks. Mm-hmm. But I think if you do it long enough, like, I can listen to the same thing a million times because I have to, like, but it's a tough job. I can't lie. It's like exhausting. It is definitely far more difficult than one might be led to believe, just, because like an engineer or a producer is like sitting in a chair all day looking at a screen. That's what it looks like. But, I think the reality is that they're looking at that screen, they're talking to the band behind them while also listening to the live take that's happening out in the live room, mm-hmm. and they're watching the needles on the compressor, they're watching their level, like they're thinking about tone, they're thinking about like
multitasking.
Yeah, so
and then if you're like producing, you're not even thinking about just the sound. Maybe you're thinking about the lyrics and the arrangement.
It's a lot. Everything. That's what I mean. It's like it's a high
different
bandwidth,
personalities every day.
Right.
People come in
and it's so hard to do all of that. So I try my best.
Yeah.
It's so hard to do all of that all the time, and like, but it is people like. People will find out, like new engineers, new producers. You'll see, like eventually mm-hmm. you're going to be like, oh my God, how do you maintain this?
Right.
I don't know any engineer that hasn't had like kind of, like major anxiety or like a psychological meltdown at some point, like it comes with a job. So it does take a very particular type of person to be able to keep at it. Mm-hmm. I don't think it's healthy.
I used to think I wanted to do what you do, and then I started working with people, and they would produce my stuff, and I was like, oh, like you were giving so much care and genuine like passion for these songs that you have, you know, nothing to do with up until this point.
Right.
And they're doing so much work. I'm like, I don't know if I would ever have that passion for just anybody who comes in and, you know, pays me to record them. It'd be really tough. And then to, you know, see it through for the course of days or weeks or even years, like the Floral Portrait album, which I read about 4 years in the making. Sounds amazing.
Yeah, that one, we worked really hard on that one. That was another like early COVID, you know, like I think by the time everybody finally had like vaccines and whatnot, we finally did like a string quartet session for that record. And like everybody in that room got COVID.
Damn.
And it was just like, okay, well, that's how it's going to be.
Yeah.
You know, so it became like a logistical thing of like, oh, so we have horn players, they can't wear masks. So,
right.
You know, and I mean, this seems like COVID has disrupted space-time to me because it seems like so long ago that all of this happened and stuff.
Right.
But, you know, I've had somebody cancel this week because it's back. So,
right.
You know, I don't know how I got on that. Sorry.
No, you're good. But I had another question actually about for a band or an artist who's coming in to record with you for the first time. What are some, you know, some key ingredients that they need to make sure that they have ready to go when they come into the studio for the first time to make for like a really smooth recording session?
Yeah. I think the best thing that you can do is to be way more rehearsed than you think you need to be. Not to bring it back to COVID again, but like what I saw kind of in the aftermath of like the lockdown that we never really had, but you know, bands were, you know, excited to book time in the studio and, you know, they were coming in, but like they had maybe only had one band practice or something like that. So like the rehearsal was in the studio at that point. And so, I mean, many bands, and through no fault of their own, you know, they just really wanted to be back in the studio and doing it. And I was glad to be there, but just a lot of people weren't ready. So.
And they're live tracking like
a lot,
band?
Yeah, a lot of the, you know, depending on the genre,
right.
You know, like if it's a punk band, I want everybody playing, you know, and that, you know, is kind of anxiety inducing for the band, especially if you're not ready and if, you know, the drummer doesn't know the song really well yet, or, you know, like.
And then you're just wasting time.
You're wasting time and wasting money, and I hate when people waste money, you know, like I feel personally guilty when someone's paying me and they're not able to, you know, do whatever it is that they need to be doing. I know it's not my fault, but I will blame myself in that situation 100% of the time. You know, I should talk to a therapist about that maybe. But like, so
I mean, I get that, you know, it's like, it probably feels weird to take money when you know that they don't get the product that they in their minds were hoping for, even though it's, you know, on their end.
It is. I mean, I'll still like, I cut people some slack a lot of the time when it's not, you know, because ultimately it's not about that for me. I'm very idealistic and very, you know, not naive, but it can appear that way. I just want to make good records.
Yeah.
You know, the fact that I get paid to do that is amazing. I'm glad I can support my family. But, you know, it's not the bottom line. And I've had people, you know, say of other studios that, you know, they go in and like, they feel like they are, the engineer's just like working at a job. You know, they're just trying to get them in, get them out, you know, and I can't imagine being that way, you know, like in any circumstance, because I'd be so unhappy if I didn't like do my best. And, you know, so I guess that's a good thing.
Yeah, and it's not like you've only been doing it for a couple of years. Like you've been doing this for 20 years.
It's
a long time to become jaded if you were going to be that kind of guy.
Yeah, no, I'm not. I didn't get to the point of being jaded yet. I probably won't. I think it would have happened.
Right.
But to get back to, you know, just being overly prepared, I think is really important. If you need to do an extra band practice or 2 or 3 before the studio, if you can swing that, I know it's hard because everybody has to work all the time, especially right now. It's just going to make everything go more smoothly. I personally, if you're recording with me, I am ready for you. Like when you come in, I know because I've asked, I'm like, how many, who plays what, what's your kind of sound, give me some reference mixes, all that stuff I kind of like obsess over in, the days before that band comes in. So I've got them ready from my part,
Right.
I know that it is like just being in the studio for a lot of people is just naturally stressful. They're anxious, they're nervous, especially like doing vocals and things like that.
Classic, yeah.
Yeah, it's rough. And so I just try really hard to make sure that everybody is like as comfortable as they can be. I can't always succeed in that because it's, half of that relationship is outside of me. But,
Right.
I think that's important for the band to just be comfortable. I think that's more important than most things.
Yeah.
It yields better results as long as people are having fun, that's very helpful. Having fun is what it should generally be,
Yeah.
like if you're not having a good time, what are you doing? Like,
And if you are overly prepared, you won't be as stressed, which means you're going to have more fun
right,
in the studio.
right.
And then you can spend less time trying to remember what the chord progression was or whatever.
Yeah.
And just focus on, the feel and like making sure you get maybe some of the more abstract elemental things ready to go instead of thinking about the more practical, like, well, when do I hit the snare kind of moments.
Yeah. You shouldn't at that point. I mean, there's, a time and place for like experimentation and whatnot. But, if you're just showing up, again, just go into it knowing that, yes, this is going to be kind of a stressful situation, but everything you can do to mitigate that stress as an artist, you should do. Like, because when you don't, I mean, it shows, and it's just like, it's not a good feeling. That's the only time that like infighting in bands seems to happen is like, when somebody, it's like a group project, if everybody's not putting in, their work, then it kind of holds the whole thing back. Yeah, also anything you can do to relax, but not too much, not too much.
Yeah. It's a weird, like halfway
Yeah.
gray area.
And again, I try really hard to make that happen. And I mean, I do it in, obviously I kind of research the psychology of all of things, sound and music. And, so like even, for example, the live room at my place is all neutral colors, earth tones. It's kind of low lighting. I know it's the darkest studio anywhere probably. And I'm not even going to apologize for that. I think that's, kind of the right vibe.
Vibey.
Yeah. I mean, to me, it was like anything that is like not like hospital, like
Right,
color.
fluorescent.
Yeah. Just I can't imagine making music in some of these studios. The local studios are not like that, and that's cool. That's cool that we have vibey studios here, but they exist. They're out there.
It's crazy. It's
And,
like sterile environment.
Yeah.
Weird.
I just can't imagine being creative like that. So yeah. I mean, I think it works too. I mean, they've figured out that if you have bright red walls in the room that you're in, that can adjust your mood, usually for the worse.
Right.
So like
yeah. That sounds very hostile.
So yeah, I just try to have like a neutral environment in there, and like the control room's very dark, so that they're focused less on what I or anybody that's in the control room with me or the rest of the band or whatever. We're back here in this dark booth. You just do your thing, and seems to have worked. It seems to like people at least say that they're comfortable there, and that means the world to me, because I think that's where like the good stuff comes from, is like just liking the environment that you're in. So
Right.
I'm glad y'all like my weird dark little I mean, it's yeah, it's weird.
World.
It's a weird place, I know, but
Yeah,
you know,
you literally built a world.
I did, and yeah,
Your own little universe.
yeah, I still like it. I'm still happy with it, which is cool.
Hell yeah. Well, I got one specific question for you before we get to the last 5, which is just 5 quick questions.
Yeah.
But if you could have dinner with any one producer, living or dead, who would it be and why?
Sylvia Massey.
Don't know her.
She. What's interesting is I'm not super familiar with all of her work, but I'm familiar with her as a person and a personality. She has a great book called Recording Unhinged. I mean, I know she did like some of the early Tool stuff, and I think she did like System of a Down or like, I'm not totally certain about. Doesn't really matter. It's her and her concepts regarding production, recording. Very creative in capturing sounds, and I think it was her thing to like. There's a Tool record where they, fired a shotgun into an old piano a number of times, like to get the right kind of impactful sound.
Whoa.
And that was her, and she's just a really cool person. I mean, any video you can find of this woman speaking about anything, she's just the coolest.
Sylvia Massey?
Massey, yeah.
Cool. I'll have to check her out.
Yeah, so I think it would be her. I just think we would have such a good time. She makes it fun,
Yeah.
Like she makes every part of it fun, and kind of understands that that's where it's at more than, being all about the gear. She has her favorites and I have my favorites and, whatever. But like, having a good time and being creative, with no reservations at all about that process, I think is cool. And that's what I've kind of gleaned from her is, to focus on that part, So yeah, it would be her. If not her, Heba Kadri. A lot of the women in the industry, which there aren't that many, but like my heroes tend to be people like Sylvia and Heba, who is primarily like a mastering engineer up in New York, and she's worked on just everything. Like her name is
Heba, what's her last name?
Kadri. I think it's Khadry.
Heba Kadri.
Yeah, Heba. Sorry if I'm butchering her name, but and nothing. I mean, I know she like mixed and mastered the most recent Bjork record, which is insane.
That's how I know her, because I was like, I know that name. I don't know what album it was that I like looked up who the mixing and mastering person was. Yeah, but it might have been that new Bjork album.
She doesn't mix that often, from what I understand. But I mean, if like when we're done talking, you can look at just like her like all music or whatever, and it's just every record of the last like decade that you like.
Insane.
Just seems like a really cool person. So yeah, if I could have just like a night out with them talking about the geekiest stuff in the world, I would be that would be it for me. Yeah.
I think you gave a lot of people some Wikipedia.
Yeah,
research
look into these
do.
people, and I mean, I think it's important to support women in any industry, but especially this one. And I'm trying not to be too like whatever, but it's just like it's always been a male-dominated field,
right?
Always, and what's funny is that when women are involved, whether it be musicians like Carol Kay.
Mm-hmm. Never like talked about as much as like one of the coolest bass players.
It's ridiculous because she's the best. So Delia Derbyshire, who was like a electronic pioneer, did like the Doctor Who theme song and all that, like super cool. So they exist, they pop up in history, but it's still like 95% men, it seems like, and but when they are there, they're the best at what they do. And I know that's like, I don't care. What, interpret that how
Right.
you will. But, I just really, really appreciate, the contributions of these women in particular too, like are the thing to me,
Yeah, that's so interesting because I've been listening to this podcast called Bandsplain. Have you ever heard of it?
No, no.
I think you would like it. It's this girl named Yasi. Each episode she has on a guest to basically deep dive into some sort of cult band's discography.
Cool.
And sometimes the cult band is like, U2, gigantic.
Right.
But then, then there's like the Pixies and like, a bunch of other bands that you would know, but aren't necessarily like gigantic stars.
Yeah, stadium.
Right.
Yeah.
But she has a few times has talked about how she really gravitates towards bands that have like male energy and female energy, such as the Pixies.
Right.
Because there's just this sort of human, it's, the two sex, well,
it's balance.
I'll get in trouble saying that, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like the two energies, the masculine and the feminine energy, combining the yin and yang, and it's like, it feels whole. Whereas if it's all dudes, it's just too masculine. And if it's all women, it might feel too feminine. And I just thought that was such an interesting point. And now when I listen to music, like I think about that, like the Pixies, and like even visually just having like all dudes on stage sometimes just seems to like, just feels weird. And if you go to like, if I'm trying to organize a bill like of different artists, like to me it's more interesting when there's guys and girls, not when it's all dudes.
Yeah. No, we've had the all dudes thing, and all dudes can do great things, and all women can do great things, and I guess that's my underlying point. It's just like there needs to be more of a balance of, like you said, the energy. It doesn't have to be. It's not a gender thing.
Right.
In this field, in every field, especially the arts, because I mean, I don't know. I grew up primarily listening to women. Fiona Apple is a big thing.
She's awesome.
She's still awesome. Like she's like someone that I've listened to since like middle school, and I'm still like, every record she puts out, I'm like, this is a perfect album. You're amazing.
I like discovered her 2 years ago. I was late, so late. But she's amazing.
She gets better and better too, which is cool. So just a lot. I mean, all the Tori Amos, who I was a huge fan of as a teenager. I can't really do it anymore, but like that was very important. So I mean, it's a long list of like I almost exclusively listen to like female artists. Because I felt like they were communicating something deeper and more substantial, I guess, and than kind of just dude bro rock stuff.
Yeah. Once you've heard it a lot, it's like, all right, give me something different.
Yeah, it has its place.
Yeah, I've started to like grow tired of always hearing like a guy's voice. And like I found myself, and it used to be the opposite. I just ended up, maybe it's just because I always listened to like male dude rock bands,
right?
Like Queens of the Stone Age, Foo Fighters, like all that stuff in high school. And then nowadays, like
it's flipped. Yeah,
it's flipped a little bit. Not, I mean, I won't say completely, but one of my favorite albums is always Blue Rev.
Yeah,
that came out, I guess last year, and like. I don't know. It's so much more interesting to me currently, at least.
Right.
So like, or I'm more hooked immediately when there's like a female's voice there for whatever reason.
Yeah. We don't need to get super philosophical because they're they'll drag us.
Yeah. Please don't drag us.
It's not about that. It's just about appreciation.
Exactly. We appreciate all of it.
Yeah. All y'all. All right,
let's move this on to the last five. Where you get to pick some questions out of this bowl.
Oh, fun.
And, just give your honest answer. Hopefully you get the one that's, what's a musical hot take? Because I know you got plenty of them.
I've got so many most of my takes are hot takes, but we'll see if I can funnel them.
Number one.
In the studio or playing live?
Perfect question for you.
answer's pretty obvious. I'm honestly not a huge fan of live music outside a few specific genres.
Interesting.
That's just my personal thing. Like I love live small combo jazz stuff. Like basically it's like stuff that I wouldn't necessarily listen to by choice on a recording. Although I do love all the blue note. I mean, you know, I love jazz. But modern jazz, I would rather see that band and experience that live, so I can kind of like take in, you know, everything as I feel. I'm also spoiled in that, like, I do most of the stuff I do at the studio is live. I would say 75% of it is like live, everybody in the same room. So I'm kind of spoiled by like getting to experience that, but also have like, I'm in this perfect little listening environment in the control room with these great speakers, and I can hear everything well, and like I don't have 50 people talking. You know, like, because that's it for me. It's a distraction. You know, like live. Yeah. When I'm at shows, I'm always very easily distracted because of my environment, and so I don't get to appreciate it as much. So yeah, the exceptions are like jazz, you know, singer-songwriter stuff. I'd rather be there for that than necessarily put it on, but you know, it depends on the artist.
Yeah.
But yeah, I love everything about recording in the studio. And again, like I said an hour ago, it's more about sound for me. Whether that's some quasi-autistic thing, I don't know. I feel like everyone's like autistic now, and that's cool.
That's a whole other episode.
I mean, yeah, TikTok tells me that I'm autistic. But,
what's up with that? It's so strange.
It's I do, you know, whatever. But
we'll probably look back at that in 20 years, and there will be some like textbook answer of why.
Because we all are, you know, like either we all are or we're not, you know, we're all kind of like nerds in our own way, or we're like, you know, react to stimulus a certain way, you know, whatever. But yeah,
I mean, it's a spectrum, right?
Yeah. A very, very broad spectrum.
Very broad spectrum.
Just not, it's not as narrow as it was pre-TikTok.
It's all TikTok's fault. Yeah.
I mean, that's when it happened. Anyway, yeah, love recording, love sound, love
in the
control
studio.
over the sound. Seen some great live shows, but it's just not my personal favorite way to consume music.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Let's see number 2. Yeah.
That's an interesting first one. But.
Yeah, it was perfect for you.
2 artists I want to see collaborate. Oh man. That's a good one. What's interesting is I spend so much time listening to the stuff that I'm working on that I hardly listen to music outside of the studio. It's really rare that I do so. But just based on what I'm kind of into right now, I would love to hear like dry cleaning.
Yo, let's talk about dry cleaning. I just started listening to them 2 weeks ago.
They're kind of the first band in a couple years that's really stood out as like, you know, just like this band is cool immediately. Like this is great.
Polarizing.
Yeah.
Gary Ashby.
Yeah. Oh man, I love it. I love everything about that band. Like,
so sick. Yeah. That album is wild.
Yeah. So big fan of that. John Parrish is the man who produced that.
Okay.
He did almost all of PJ Harvey's stuff.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, he's just great. He's super cool, and he also did Aldous Harding.
Yes.
Who I also love. So that's who I would want.
I was going to bring up Aldous Harding.
I want them to collaborate because they're 0 degrees of separation from each other anyway, and they would be produced by John Parrish by proxy. Mm-hmm. So like, I don't know what that would sound like, but I would love to hear it because I love her, and dry cleaning is amazing, and so I think that would be sick. Off the cuff. I mean that would be so good.
I have to admit, every once in a while when I'm posting like a Spotify, just like a song or whatever that I like, I feel like really good when you like the story. So I'm like, nice. I got the seal of approval. Like he thinks it's cool.
I mean, my opinion doesn't matter, but
no. But like I posted the Algis Harding once. I posted one of her stories or one of her songs, and you liked it, and I was like, I knew this was good.
Yeah,
I knew this was sick.
Big fan. I mean, I guess if my opinion matters at all, it's only because I have so little time to like consume music that I'm not working on.
Right.
So like if I'm gonna take that time, then like I really
it's
like
gonna be
I really
great.
like what it is, and I think it's special. So
yeah. Well, we'll get to question 3,
man,
but I'm very
Yeah,
curious about dry cleaning because I've recently been like showing it to people, like Gary Ashby, that song, without really I'm just saying, what do you think of the mix? Like, what do you think about this song? And so far I've had one of my friends be like, this is trash. I could never listen to this.
Right.
And then another friend being like, whoa, like this is interesting. This is kind of cool. And then another friend at first didn't like it. And by the end of the song was like, oh, this is sick.
Seems about right. That seems about the distribution of responses to that band.
Right. Very polarizing.
That I can perceive. Yeah.
And I at first was like, how could I listen to this? And now I'm like, I'm in.
Saying, the first maybe song or whatever that you listen to of theirs, and you're just like, I don't know, because like the band in the background is doing this like just sick stuff. Every single thing that they come up with is like the best song I've heard.
Yeah.
And then there's this woman, and she's speaking. She might sing-ish, but normally it's speaking.
Heavy British accent.
Yeah, her voice is way up in the mix, maybe too high, too far out. I get that it's the focal point, but like I think, if I was criticizing this mix, which I actually think is great, maybe she could come down
just a
couple decibels. But no, man, I remember the exact moment that I first heard them, and it was one of those things where I pulled the car over because I was just like, I don't know what this is or what's happening.
Yeah.
I don't even know how I stumbled upon it, but and then I just sat in the car and listened to the whole record, in like the parking lot at Kroger or something, and by the end of that I was totally hooked. And then I found out, it's John Parrish, who I love, and so that sealed the deal. But
so cool.
I think they're great. I think they're like the most original and just one of my favorite bands of the last 5 years.
So
especially
sick.
Like new bands. Yeah.
And the fact that it's called Stump Work makes so much sense. Because I was like, what does that mean? I looked up what Stump Work is. And it's like the what do you call it? The threads that come outside of like a cloth.
Right.
So it's like, oh, that's the vocals.
Yeah.
It's just outside of it.
Oh, it's brilliant. Yeah.
It's brilliant. And then the album cover, of course, is so interesting. Of the soap.
No, they're great. I love her lyrics too. I mean, like whether it's gobbledygook or not, I don't know. It doesn't matter. It means something to me, and it intrigues me. It's, it's like listening to the best ever book on tape or something.
Very ASMR.
Yeah, it does all the things. It's I love that band. I would love, to see them live. Actually, I don't know how they would pull it off because she's so soft spoken. I'm like, how do you get her voice to be loud enough? I guess maybe they play it really quietly. That's the only way I see it working. Maybe. It would be a nightmare. I don't want to run sound for them. I would just like to see them.
Yeah, that would be tough. Yeah, y'all go listen to Dry Cleaning. Let us know what you think. All right, let's see what question number 3 is.
Oh boy. Best worst decade of music. The worst was the 80s.
Nice. Agreed.
I have so many reasons to dislike the 80s. They all have to do with the recordings at that time. Too much cocaine, so everything was way too bright.
Right.
I don't like a really digitally sounding reverb on anything, let alone a snare drum. Just, I don't know. And I'm realizing that there actually is like a whole bunch of stuff from the 80s that I do like.
Right.
But when you say 80s, I immediately go to like the worst of it, which is to me either like the hair bands, just like
Def Leppard,
Bon Jovi, like it's just that like garbage. But then I also, there's like the kind of power ballads. I just there's so much trash in the 80s, and I think I also am just not quite old enough to have like had it hit when I was at my like 12 is
Right.
like when you like really get into music or whatever.
Yep.
I was nowhere near that when the 80s ended, so I missed that. And so yeah, there are a handful of songs, and I mean, Kate Bush,
Kate Bush.
Talking Heads,
Tears for Fears.
yeah, there's good, there's good in every decade, but that's definitely the worst.
Agreed.
The best, I don't know if I can.
If you want to get specific, you can. You can always do like a 68 to 78, something like that.
Yeah, that would probably be it for me. At least that's the one that like shapes the most of my sonic choices as a producer, as an engineer, is late 60s to like 77. So yeah, we'll say 67 to 77.
Nice.
That's the one that I've done the most research on. I like the most music, generally speaking, from that era. I also really like 94 to 2004 ish, because, and again, that's when I was like the right age for everything. That's high school and college, and in middle school. I'm not. Yeah, jeez. So yeah, I really like the mid 90s, and I also really like the first decade of the 2000s.
Yeah,
there's just so many records came out in that. First couple Tame Impala records. Animal Collective. All their best stuff was in that kind of period.
In what period?
Kind of mid 2000s, so like 2005 to 2007 or something. Merriweather, Post Pavilion.
Like 2010, right?
Was it?
Yeah, 2009.
See, I don't even know anymore.
Might have been 2009.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah, I know what the worst decade was.
Right.
I
thank you for not saying like the 1460s, because so many people do that, and like.
That's silly, man. Like, whatever.
Be real.
Yeah.
Just trash a decade. I don't care which one it is.
Yeah, no.
Because
at the end we go way back, but
right.
Recorded music is really. Although, I love Stravinsky, so we could do turn of the 20th century. Love all that shit that was happening right then. So, I basically love everything up until 79. Maybe 80, because that counts as the 70s, right? That's something I've learned recently. It's I don't know why I didn't know that, but and then with very little exception, the 80s can fuck off. Very early 90s are still the 80s, and then it gets really good about 94 for me.
Yeah, that's a fair point.
And we've stayed pretty good, overall.
I think so too.
I think. Yeah.
I love the 2010s, but that's also the high school.
Well, that's what, maybe I'm misdating a lot of the stuff that I'm talking about, because, I've just lost all track of time.
That's okay.
I no longer know, because I'll say we made this record 5 years ago, and it was like 2 years ago. And I'm just I don't understand. And then, there's others that I started pre-COVID that we're still working on, and, that feels impossible.
Yeah, that's insane.
But they're coming. They're coming.
Are we on soon. Question 4 or 5? I
think this is 4.
Okay, cool.
These are good questions.
Thank you.
Desert Island albums, 3 of them. I'm gonna regret whatever I say.
This is a tough one.
A week from now.
Yeah.
But I will say the ones that most shaped me as a producer, engineer, person. So that would be the White Album.
Cool. Lots to choose from on that one.
So hard. This is so hard.
It's a tough one.
Wow.
Someone pointed out that I picked my top 3 favorite albums, which would be like Radiohead, In Rainbows, Blonde, and like My Bloody Valentine. They're like, you're gonna have a really depressing time on this album or on this island. You pick White Album. Lots of vibes to choose from on
There's
one
lots
album.
of vibes, but it's overall kind of a dark. I've always perceived that one as being kind of spooky and dark.
Yeah, it is a little bit.
The thing about that is like music that other people tend to think of as like depressing. That's the shit that makes me feel better when I'm depressed. So like,
yeah.
you know,
Cathartic.
so that helps me make my decision. I would also take probably XO, Elliott Smith.
Cool. Yeah. Is that your favorite of his? Because that's the one I've maybe listened to the least.
Yeah.
Other than his first one.
Oh, it's so hard for me to pick. I can't, you know, that's why I'm just like, I'm going to say this and then I'm going to update this list for you.
Right.
But we'll say that one. And then we will say Desert Island. Sorry, this is good. We can whittle this down, speed through this a little bit.
Yeah.
Cool. And I like a recent, maybe a more recent record that I like a lot.
Yeah.
Man, this is the hardest question in the world. Great question. Desert Island.
We got the Beatles. So we got the old school stuff.
Got Beatles. You know what? I would probably just take a compilation of if this universe exists. I don't know if this actually exists, but we'll just say like Motown's greatest hits.
There you go.
Yeah.
That's a good loophole compilation.
Yeah, because
there's got to be a Motown greatest hits.
Yeah. Well, I was gonna say like Motown and Stax. I was trying to like push them together, even though they're very different sounds and very, that would be it. I mean, I think that would be amazing to listen to. So
there you go.
We'll say that for now. If I had 10 hours to think about it, I could maybe come up with a better,
yeah.
like.
That's the hard part about some of these questions is they are, they end up feeling very personal because we love this music. And then you feel like if you don't give it the proper response, you feel like you've failed in a way.
Right.
You're like driving on the way home. You're like, shit,
no,
I should have said this one.
And like, yeah, I mean, and I'm decidedly not even going for like cool points. I'm just like, what would it actually be?
Right.
And I've already, that fits most of my moods, I think.
Yeah.
That covers a lot of moods.
It's a solid 3.
Maybe Kid A would be in there, actually,
cool.
Just because it's like, I feel like if you're on an island, that would be a cool mood to be stuck in. But the Motown gives you kind of some flexibility.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, those are all wrong answers.
All wrong answers.
I don't know how to... I'm not good at ranking things.
Yeah.
Like I've kind of ranked Radiohead records and ranked Beatles records, but outside of that, if you ask me my favorite food, I have no idea.
Let's see what the last question is.
Fantasy supergroup.
Ooh.
Wow, that's hard.
That's another tough one. If you want to keep it to a 4-piece or trio, it makes it a little bit easier.
Yeah, good idea. We're gonna have this would be so well. Oh my God, what's his name? I'm gonna like blank on this, but Bernard Purdy is on drums.
Okay.
He played on everything. Like
It's old school.
Yeah, everything from like Sea Change by Beck, which I love.
He was on Sea Change. By
Yeah,
Beck.
he played on most of those tracks.
Whoa.
Yeah.
I don't know the album that well, but I wouldn't have pictured that.
That's actually, I will put Sea Change on my list and remove the Elliott Smith one. Sorry, Elliott Smith. But Sea Change was, one of my favorite records ever.
Wow. Okay.
Nigel Godrich produced it, so.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah. Produced
Okay.
and
I need to give
engineered.
it a re-listen.
Yeah.
I tried to listen to it.
Yeah,
like
dude,
a year ago.
It's if you go through a breakup and then that album comes out, like that is your album. So,
Whoa.
but it's still hopeful, and I love Beck up until a point. I don't think anything he's done in the last decade has been all that great.
Yeah. He's fallen off a bit.
But so Fantasy Supergroup, we got Purdy on drums, we got Paul McCartney on bass,
Nice.
and also vocals. because I think he was the best at both of those things.
Yeah.
And we've got Thelonious Monk on piano.
Cool. Nice. This is a crazy band.
Yeah, this is wild. And then who's playing guitar? Annie Clark. We'll get Annie Clark on guitar. St. Vincent.
Oh, okay. I was like, why do I know that name?
Yeah, just because like I love what she does to that instrument and the sounds she gets out of it, and just her and her music in general. And so that's a 4-piece.
Yeah.
And but I want one more person in there. One other drummer.
2 drummers.
Yeah, cool. Yeah. We'll throw in Stu from King Gizzard and Lizard Wizard. Just
sick.
Bernard Purdy, and then him, or no, not Stu. Sorry, Stu. The dude from the OCs. The main, I know they have 2, but the one that's been with them forever. I think that would be so killer.
Whoa.
Yeah.
I have really not listened to OCs, but they
Love
have
the OCs.
They have just as much of a cult following, it seems like, as King Gizzard.
Yeah.
You know.
I like both of those bands for different reasons, and I love the OCs and I love that energy. So I feel like that kind of energy on drums, and then Purdy, which is just total groove and funk, and then Paul, melodic bass, and I mean, I do think he's like the best. He's at least the best like white male vocalist of all time, in my opinion. And
like, man has serious range.
It's crazy, and I think just watching that super long documentary that came out recently,
Get Back documentary.
Just realizing how, like, even when he was just like showing somebody a song idea, his pitch was dead on, his tone was dead on, and he could do anything from like that shouty, ridiculous thing to just the most beautiful sing-songy thing.
Dude, Helter Skelter and Martha, My Dear.
Yeah.
Like, what? It's the same guy.
How do you do both of those things? And, but just like, they're doing takes, especially on that record, they're doing takes and they're keeping the live vocals, and he sounds amazing. Even though I don't love that record, but.
Which one?
Let It Be.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
I was talking to somebody the other day, so that was their favorite. That's the Beatles is an interesting one for people to rank albums, because there really is a lot of. There's not really a wrong answer.
Yeah.
But if you put anything before Rubber Soul as like favorite, I don't get that.
You're a boomer.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, I have a weird ranking. If you're.
Let's go.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll end
White
on
Album,
the Beatles ranking.
White Album is
number one.
Is number one.
Okay.
I'm gonna say that Revolver is number 2.
That's probably my favorite.
Rubber Soul is number 3.
Cool.
And then honestly, I mean, I'd probably jump to like. That's wrong. I lied. White Album, Magical Mystery Tour.
Whoa.
Yeah.
That's
then
out of left field.
Revolver.
Okay.
Then Rubber Soul. What's interesting, I guess, my point is that Sgt. Pepper's would actually rank very low. But we don't have an hour for me to explain that. But
yeah.
Probably Help would come before Sgt. Pepper.
Whoa. That's crazy.
I mean, that record's cool.
Help is cool. There's some crazy. There's that one song, If I Needed You or If I Need Someone.
Right.
George doing some crazy like whap, whap,
No,
like
they were
the
kind
volume
of
thing.
finally coming into their thing. That's right when they started smoking weed.
Yeah, there you go.
So that was kind of a pivotal thing. So I ranked that and just some of the songs on there way higher. But yeah, so.
Damn. So Abbey Road didn't even make the top 4 or 5.
Abbey Road's, it's probably in the top 5. If I like, it's so hard because I have different reasons for, but I like Abbey Road over Sgt. Pepper's.
Same.
So there's that. But yeah, I think Magical Mystery Tour is like the most underrated release. And, but yeah, the White Album is like the reason I like music and recording and everything.
Yeah. I'm going to go back and listen to Magical Mystery Tour. It's been a long time since I've listened to that one.
It's cool, man, especially from a recording standpoint, because that's when a lot of the effects that, are standard pedal board shit now come from that album.
Interesting.
And kind of experimenting on that album.
Whoa.
So,
I listened to Baby You're a Rich Man the other day.
Yeah.
I forgot about that one.
that's weird.
So
that's a weird one.
strange.
Yeah, there's some weird shit. Yeah, but
Same with Blue Jay Way.
Blue Jay Way is
Terrifying
spooky.
song.
Yeah, I remember hearing this stuff when I was, a kid, and I think so here's the White Album thing for me. It's like my parents always listened to the Beatles all the time. Anytime we went on a road trip, that's all we listened to. It was just a thing. But they had one album that they never listened to, and it was the White Album, and they had it on the shelf and everything, but they never ever pulled it out. And so I thought that it was just either really bad or I didn't know what. I'm just they don't listen to this, and so I would wait for them to leave the house, as maybe a 10-year-old or something. They would leave the house, and I would put the White Album on, to see what it was all about. And then to me, it's just has so much range and so many cool, sonically it's really cool, so so it was this special thing. I really thought I would get in trouble if they caught me listening to it, or
that's so funny,
getting to Revolution Number 9 as a 10-year-old and being
so weird.
I don't know what this is, and to this day I think it's brilliant, but yeah, it was a naughty thing, and
that's hilarious.
They're just oh, we just don't 20 years later I'm why didn't we ever listen to that? And they're oh, we just don't like that record. And I'm but you like Blackbird, right? Yeah, you like Back in the USSR, right? Yeah, all these, and I'm just those are all on that record. And they're
Yeah, it kind of, especially if you're listening to it on vinyl, it does force you to have to listen to the ones that are strange. If you want to listen to Blackbird, you're probably going to have to sit through Piggies or whatever the hell.
Yeah. I love Piggies though. I love that whole record. There's really no, there's nothing on
Rocky
it.
Raccoon.
It's great.
Come on.
It's
crazy.
ridiculous. It's insane, but it's great.
So good.
Yeah, love that record so much.
Hell yeah. White Album rules.
Yep, that's
Every
the one.
Beatles album is awesome, except Sgt. Pepper's.
Yeah, even some of Beatles for Sale, some of the early stuff has amazing songs on it, and I didn't really even investigate until it was much later in life.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Hell yeah.
This band you've never heard of, the Beatles.
Yeah, very low key.
Yeah.
Well, Jesse, thank you for joining me.
Thanks so much, man.
We did about an hour and a half.
Oops.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, man.
I always feel bad because I'm I hope they don't have to do anything.
No, I can
sometimes we get
talk.
really wrapped up in whatever we're talking about. And if you've made it this far in the podcast, thank you.
Thank you for your patience and understanding. No, man, I can yap when it's about this stuff. I'm very, this is all I think about. It really is, so I can talk. We could do this for 5 hours.
Exactly.
And I would not slow down. So,
well, thank you, man. I appreciate you giving
Thank
your
you.
time, your expertise. Everybody, hit up Jesse to record some sweet tunes or get them mastered. Either one, or both.
I would love to work with any of y'all.
Hell yeah. Give him a follow on Instagram at is it Jesse at the Glow?
Jesse at the Glow.
Hell yeah. At Jesse at the Glow.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, thank you again, man, for
Thanks,
coming on.
man.
I appreciate it.
Of course. Glad we did it.
I'll see you later. Thank you again for tuning into the newest episode of On That Note with Parker Whirling. Remember, not only can you listen to the episodes on Apple Podcast and Spotify, but you can also watch the episodes on my YouTube channel, which is linked in the description below. And on that note, I'll see you guys next time.